Hey guys, it's me, Aaron again. Now, do you know what month it is? Do you guys know? It's a new month. That's right, it's December, and December is one of the best months of the year. It's the happiest time of the year. It's the most wonderful time of the year. And the reason why December is so great is because we get to celebrate Christmas. That's right. And you know, Christmas is great because we get snow if we're lucky, right? 1 or 2 days. We get time off from school, time with our families. We get presents and we get to give presents. It's really, really a great, fun time. But the most important thing, the best part of Christmas is that we get to celebrate the birth of Jesus, right? Now, last week we learned a few things about Jesus. We learned that he existed way before he was even born, right? We learned that he was with God from the very, very beginning. And we also learned that he's the light of the world. So if you ever wonder what God is like, all you have to do is look at Jesus and look at his life and look at the way that he interacted with others and the things he said and the things he did. And that is what God is like. But before we get into telling the story of Jesus' birth, there's another guy's birth who's very, very important, and we get to talk about him today. And his name is John. A lot of the times we call him John the Baptist. And this is his story of his birth. So his dad was this guy named Zechariah. Everyone say, "Hi, Zechariah." Zechariah was a priest. Which is kind of like what Justin, Daniel, or myself do here. He worked at the temple. He would do the things that they needed to keep the temple running. He would light the candles and do the other stuff to get the temple ready for people to come and worship. And Zechariah had a wife named Elizabeth. Everyone say, "Hi, Elizabeth." God looked at Zechariah and Elizabeth and said that they were blameless. And what that means is that they were really good about following all the rules. If they ever broke a rule, they asked for forgiveness and they did the things that they were supposed to do after that. And they were known as these kind of really good leaders in their community. But there was something that was a problem for them, something that made Elizabeth very sad. And that's that they did not have any children. And now they were both very, very old, a lot older than people normally can be to have children. Most of your grandparents are too old to be having kids, and these guys would have been probably older than a lot of your grandparents, and they didn't have any kids, and that made them both really sad. But one day, as Zechariah was working in the temple, an angel appeared out of nowhere. Zechariah was surprised and terrified.
I'm surprised and terrified.
Don't be afraid, Zechariah. God has heard your prayers. You and Elizabeth, y'all are going to have a son, a little boy. But there's a few things that you need to know first. Number one, you need to name the boy John. Gotta be John. Number two, he should never drink any wine. Number three, he is going to be very, very, very special. Number four, he is going to be filled with the Holy Spirit, even from birth. And his life mission is going to prepare everyone for God himself to walk onto earth. He will call people back to God just like the prophets of the olden days.
But Zechariah didn't believe the angel. He wasn't sure if this could happen. I mean, he and his wife were very old.
How can I be sure this will happen? My wife and I are very old.
That's true. But I am the angel Gabriel, and I have given this message directly to you from God. But since you don't believe me, you're not going to be able to speak from now until your son is born.
Now, by this point, there was a large crowd of people who had gathered outside the temple. I mean, it didn't usually take a priest this long to light the incense. People were starting to get worried and wondering what was going on in there. And then, when Zechariah finally came out, he wasn't able to tell anyone what had happened because he wasn't able to speak. He just had to kind of wave his arms around and try to point and tell people what had happened, but he couldn't do that without using his words. But it happened just like the angel had said.
Told you.
Anyway, just like the angel Gabriel had said, Elizabeth became pregnant. And when she finally had the baby, all of her family and friends, they celebrated. You see, in those days, it was considered shameful or like you had done something wrong if you couldn't have any kids. It was as if God was punishing you. But remember, Zechariah and Elizabeth were seen as blameless by God. They hadn't done anything wrong. And the people were able to celebrate because God had shown them mercy and he had given them a child. They hadn't done anything to deserve or work for this, but God gave them this child. And this baby wasn't just a normal child. The angel told them it would be a very special child. Now, when it came time for them to finally name the baby, all the friends and the families, they all came together and they were waiting to hear what the baby's name would be. And they all wanted to name the baby Zechariah after his father, because in those days, people really liked to use family names again and again, and it'd be like a junior and a second and a third and all these family names, and you stuck with names that had been in your family before. But then Elizabeth spoke up.
No, we must name him John.
The people thought that Elizabeth had gone crazy. There's no one in your family named John, they said. Let's see what Zechariah thinks. So they went and they got him a writing tablet, and he wrote, "His name is John." Right at that moment, Zechariah was able to speak again, and Zechariah started praising and thanking God for all he had done. People around him started talking about everything that had happened. They knew that John would grow up to be someone special. And as we go on talking about Jesus and his life, we'll see what happens to John. So make sure you pay attention, because John the Baptist, he's going to be coming back, and we'll see what he does when he's a little bit older. That is just so special. I think we can learn a lot this week from Zechariah. He wasn't so sure that he could trust the promise of God in his life, even though he spent his whole life working in the temple and telling people about God's goodness. When it came down to it, he didn't believe God's promise in his own life, that God could do something that seemed so impossible. And God isn't done working now in our lives. He is still doing these same impossible miracles every single day. All we have to do is look for them and see, all we have to do is look for them and believe the promises that God has given us in our life. So you guys are going to get to talk about that now in your huddles, and I will see you later. Bye now.